Good afternoon, and welcome to our live interview with the very influential president of the Ateneo de Davao University, Father Joel Tabora, SJ. Good afternoon, Father.
Good afternoon, John. Good to see you here, since you were in my classroom.
Good to be back in your presence. Thank you for making time for us on a Sunday afternoon. We have a few questions to ask, and really most of them have to do with how should we understand the Duterte presidency. Maybe we can start with a very basic question. Duterte is the first ever president from Mindanao. How does the Ateneo de Davao University see this historic achievement?
I guess, first of all, we have to say that Ateneo de Davao University does not have an official position on this. Official positions in the university are governed by the Board of Trustees, etc., etc. We have a process. But on the other hand, the Ateneo de Davao is very supportive of the newly elected president. Many of its professors and its students were very, very active in the campaign for him. And as we have discussed matters after his election, many are very enthusiastic about wanting to be able to help him succeed as our national leader. And the reason, I think, is simple. Ateneo de Davao is in Mindanao. And there are many hopes that Mindanaoans have, and they've come to rest these hopes in Rodrigo Duterte now. Many of the, outside of the fact that many in this university shall support him in his campaign against crime and his campaign against drugs. Many of our people here are very, very committed to the peace process here, and we're very disappointed that despite all the efforts that the Aquino administration made in this regard, which engaged many of us very, very deeply here at the Ateneo de Davao, we got very involved in the peace process under President Aquino. But I guess we were all just very disappointed that in the end, because of unfortunate errors that were made and on misunderstandings here and there, that process did not end up in the peace agreement that we all hoped and prayed for. We really believe that President Duterte can lead the country to a genuine peace agreement with the Muslims. Outside of the fact that he has Muslim blood, we are convinced that he understands the Muslim situation, and that he can read the political forces within the Muslim groups better than most leaders, the most national leaders in the country. So we hope that he shall certainly be able to play a big part in bringing peace about. It will be complex, and it will probably take a different shape than it took in the under Aquino, because the president is sensitive to the MILF, but also to the MNLF, and you've heard that he is not close to discussing the possibilities of exploring the Sabah claim. So those are things, I think, that we hope can also be part of a peace agreement that could be more inclusive than if it were just than if it prescinded from the problems that we have in Sulu and in Malaysia, in the Sabah area. The other area where I think very, very urgently our people are, we're supporting him with great hope, is because in this university, most of our students and our professors are very committed to the environment. Our professors who are environmentalists are willing to risk their lives for the environment, and they've conducted studies on the environment where they've put their life on the line. It's that sort of thing. So one of the things that has been very important for our people here is his commitment against large-scale mining. Our environmentalists see large-scale mining as a huge threat to the environment here, and our water studies have shown that if you have something like the SMI Tampakan mines allowed here, then it could poison the entire water system of Mindanao, because all of these rivers and water bodies are interconnected. So we've been passionately anti mining from this university, but it's never really registered it's never really been registered as an environmental issue in under the Aquino administration. They've been cool on mining and large-scale mining because of the returns that the 1995 Mining Act deprives the Philippines of. But they've never really said large-scale mining is an environmental problem, and it is an environmental problem.
So we're looking at, you might say, a different definition of 4 Ps that excites Mindanaoans. There's the peace process, there's peace and order,
yes.
There's the planet,
yes,
and then there's also greater participation by Mindanaoans in national government.
Yes.
I'd like to discuss 1 or 2 of these Ps in a bit. But is there anything else aside from this that has gotten Mindanaoans excited about the Duterte presidency?
He's ours.
Okay.
In a sense, he's ours. Because I think that's what it's people from Mindanao are saying. Finally, we have a Mindanaoan president. All right. He's ours, but I think we all know he's not ours in the sense we don't own him, no? And we know that we cannot manipulate this guy. He has his own way, he has his own style, and he uses his own words. And but many of the Mindanaoans understand him to be ours, therefore on our side. To a great extent, in Mindanao, the so-called Manila imperialism is felt, over many years, and you can say over centuries. The ruler from the north has come and has exploited conditions here, When there was a social problem in central Luzon, they sent the farmers here, and they settled here in these lands. There were resettlement campaigns. This was started in the American time, but it was also it was also carried over under the Filipino officials in the Commonwealth time and later. The resettlement issues, which brought migrants from Luzon into Mindanao, displaced the Mindanaoans from their lands, and often through laws that they did not understand. And that was certainly very true with the Muslim people here in Mindanao, but also true of many of the indigenous peoples in Mindanao. You know, so the Mindanaoans feel finally we have a national leader who can at least mediate this to people in Luzon and help them to understand that much of the poverty that we have here in Mindanao is because of policy that was made in Manila. You know, even if you look at the statistics relative to poverty in the Philippines today, I think you have something like 70% poor in the Metro Manila area, and in the Visayas it becomes 30%. In Mindanao it becomes 40%, but in Muslim Mindanao it's almost 60%. You know, so the development has really, as it were, begun to solve the problems well in Metro Manila, but it has really neglected Muslim Mindanao and Mindanao in general. But at the same time, Mindanaoans are aware that the resources of Mindanao have been exploited by people who eventually are in Manila. All right, the timber resources have been depleted, no? And now that the timber is gone, they're going after the mineral resources, you know? And with no clear understanding of, if this exploitation takes place, how will Mindanao benefit, you know? So there's a social justice dimension, a very clear social justice issue here, where we're going to have to look at the economy, how the economy has been run by the North to the disadvantage of Mindanaoans, and how politics has been played also against the Mindanaoans, and even the use of the military. You know, and the perception of many Mindanaoans is that the military defends the interests of the North rather than the interests of all. All right. So Mindanaoans are happy that they have now a president who loves Mindanao so much he doesn't even want to go there. You know, he wants to rule from, as it were, to govern from here, which is an endearing sign, isn't it? You know, for the Mindanaoans.
Father, you've also been president of Ateneo de Naga, and you taught for many years in Ateneo de Manila. So you know what the sentiment is also in Luzon. In what way is President Duterte not merely the first president from Mindanao, but truly, and in fact, the 16th president of the Philippines? I mean to say, we can understand what the Mindanao agenda would be, but what can the voters who may not have voted for him or may have voted for him in Luzon, what can they look forward to from President Duterte?
Well, I think if you address the major problem of peace in Mindanao, you're not just addressing a Mindanao problem. You're addressing a national problem. This has really been a national problem with international ramifications for a long time. I think everybody will benefit if the problems of peace in Mindanao is addressed. I think everybody will benefit also if the problems of the indigenous peoples are also addressed. You know, because I think when we talk about the indigenous peoples, we're to a great extent talking about our national heritage, our national soul. You know, where is it that we value being Filipino most? You know, in our ability to acquire traits from the West, or in our ability to be able to respect our traditions that are of old and that form part of the richness of our Filipino heritage. The indigenous peoples, they're being, as it were, decimated by what we consider to be development aggression. You know, people want to put up a mine, and they hit the affected indigenous peoples. People want to put up a huge monocrop farm. They hit the indigenous peoples. You know, and by hitting the indigenous people, they just don't displace individuals. They destroy cultures, you know, that belong to the national heritage. You know, I think if President Duterte can address that, you know, he would be addressing a national thing. If because of Duterte now, people in universities, people people who write histories and write anthropologies can correct the writing of history relevant to Mindanao, that would be a big gain for the country. I think crime and you know, solving crime is a national concern, especially the drugs that affect, interestingly enough, even and especially the poor. You know, they're plagued by this problem. You know, because they're the ones being affected and hit by this thing, and the drug situation is very difficult because it's underground. It's underground and it's international. You know, it begins with drugs and it ends with human trafficking and gun running. So a president who is going effectively to move against this kind of crime, I think, is a national gain. No. So I think if he attacks poverty, that is a national gain. I think if you were to ask me, this is my opinion, what happened? Why is it that the Liberal Party lost so badly? You know? I think it was because they ran under the slogan, let's continue with this Daan na Matuwid. You know? And people were saying, continue with that which has not benefited us, you know, from the viewpoint of the poor. You know, the poor have heard of the improvement in the national economy. It's people are boasting about how much under the Aquino administration the economy has grown, but they're not feeling its effects. Well, people. So as far as poverty is concerned, they don't feel its effects. As far as the environment is concerned, once again, there was disappointment relative to mining, and as far as the peace process is concerned, it didn't work. So why give me a continuation of this? You know. Anyway,
Okay, let's
yeah.
Father,
Christine.
Father Tabora, you mentioned a while ago that Duterte is ours, meaning of Mindanao, but not ours. You also mentioned that in your much talked about speech, the President and the King. And everybody knows that no one can control Duterte. He has his own way of doing things. So how are we sure that he is grounded enough to make the right decisions for the country? I mean, besides coming from Mindanao, what do you think is in his character that would make him grounded or a good president for this country?
Many times the comparison, very badly, I think, has been made between Duterte and Trump. Because there are many similarities. Both of them speak their minds, and both of them use expletives that are very colorful, and both of them are, in a sense, iconoclasts. They're not afraid to strike at the idols of our civilization, our current civilization. But I think Trump is full of himself. Yeah. And that's not Duterte. I think Duterte is a person who really is concerned about the poor and really concerned about reform and understands what he wants to do and is going to do what he says that he's going to do, or what he means that he's going to do. So my confidence in him is the experience that we've had with him in Davao. This is a good man. All right, he has a lot of. He has a colorful way of presenting himself, but business is thriving in Davao. People are happy in Davao. He is not a dictator. If he were a dictator, he would be able to keep his children more in line. But he has a political line, and Sarah has a political line, and Paulo has a political line, and he allows it. He says one thing and they do another thing, and he allows it. So I think to answer your question, on the basis of our experience here in Davao, where he has delivered well, I am confident that he will deliver well also on the national scale. Duterte is also a man who does not like to hug the headlines. I don't know him to be that way in Davao. He works very quietly but effectively, And when there are problems, he comes. He faces the problems, I remember once we had a food poisoning incident here, and a good number of our students, including myself, ended up in the hospital. And lo and behold, he was at my side, and he was at the side of the kids, taking care. So people know him for that sort of personal care for people who are sick, who are disadvantaged.
Sure. They say that much of the controversy surrounding Duterte now with the national media is because he is misinterpreted, or the people are not yet used to how he does things or how he says things. Do you think the national media or the rest of the population would be able to eventually understand him more in the long run and adjust to how he is, how he works?
Sure, because the national media is also intelligent. think the logics. I mean, it's like learning a new language. You know, I mean, you're going to have to learn how to decipher. We're all going to have to learn how to decipher. I'm also taken aback by some of the things I hear. You know, when I watched the meeting de avance, I was also turned off by the rhetoric that he was using. You know, but it was rhetoric. You know, it was. And that's why I do hope that he will metamorphose, as he has said. I'm going to become different when I become president, and I do hope that he continues in his activity to bring reconciliation to the country and unity to the country. You know. So I think it's not good to push him against the wall, you know. Let him be let him act as I think he will, and I think we'll see surprising results.
Father, speaking of learning a new language, maybe you can help us make sense of what may be just seeming contradictions in the Duterte approach to policy, to governance. I know that you've insisted that you are not privy to the way his mind thinks. You're not part of the inner circle. You don't consider yourself an expert, but you run one of the leading education institutions in Mindanao. Ateneo de Davao plays a key role in the Davao society. Maybe we can ask you to help us make sense of the following. So maybe I can start with his reputation, which you have just reconfirmed, for reaching out to the poor. He has a lot of pro-poor policies in place, and yet he is also perhaps more famously known for insisting on the death penalty, which the Catholic Church recognizes as essentially anti-poor because of flawed judicial systems. How do you reconcile these two? So a pro-poor approach, and yet insistence on a policy that will impact on the lives of the poor.
Yes, it is a seeming contradiction, and I don't know that it can be reconciled. I think President Duterte really wants to go after crime. He wants people to respect the law, and as of now, he is convinced that getting people to respect the law can be done by a death penalty, all right? By the legislation of a death penalty. The church has over and over again insisted that the death penalty is not the answer. I think the church and a Catholic university like this will try to convince him that this is not the answer, you know. But we will also understand that he will not decide this issue alone. He will go to Congress, and Congress will decide on the basis of Congress's perception of the common good. All right. The church, I think, will make its stance and say, in so many cases, the death penalty has been anti-poor because it normally kills not the rich but the poor, and sometimes erroneously, many times because they cannot get legal assistance. But he will say, I need some way of making people fear the law, and so he'll go to Congress for that. No. there. Yeah.
A second seeming contradiction, Father. Davao has been booming for decades. As you said earlier, business is thriving. And anyone can see that. Now he's bringing in some of these friends from the National Democratic Front, or maybe in fact even from the Communist Party, which might stir some apprehension on the part of businessmen, even businessmen in Davao City. So he's going to have a cabinet that will have at least 3 departments headed by people you might call are from the militant left. How do we understand that situation? Would we expect, as in the first Corazon Aquino cabinet, some internal struggles between, let's say, businessmen who are there and members of the left? Or should we expect something else from a President Duterte?
John, I don't know. It's a little bit too early. We're within this week, we will have a meeting with Fidel Coeli and company in order to be able to discuss this. We really don't know what this means. I'm just sympathetic to the national leader who is saying this conflict has gone on for too long, and sometimes we don't even know what is being fought about, or what is being fought over, from my classes, the Marxist movement, the communist movement, relative to capitalism, at heart, is a social justice movement. Right? A social justice movement. Whether it works or not is another thing. But at heart, it's a movement that is trying to call forth optimum realizations of humanity within the production schemes that we have, versus a capitalism that has so often been dehumanizing in its exclusion of many people from its benefits. All right. Now, our Constitution, the way the 1987 Constitution is framed, is really a social justice Constitution.
That's right.
Sometimes I think it hasn't been tried. They already want to change it, but it hasn't been tried. It's a social justice Constitution. And it's trying to bring justice to the poor person, to the farmer, etc., etc. So based on the Constitution, there is a lot of room to come into dialogue with people who have been fighting for social justice. All right? Now, if the fight for social justice means that we're going to have to talk to the capitalists, to the lords of big business, to those who are the policymakers, the landlords, to those who are determining land distribution, etc., then we're going to have to talk, because peace will depend on it. I don't think the CPP-NDF is just going to say, now that Duterte is there, we're going to give up the fight. I think we're going to have to be able to say, because of so and so many years of struggle, there's going to be some improvement among the farmers and some improvement among laborers that has not yet been achieved. But I don't know what's going to happen in those negotiations. I'm just also from the viewpoint of the Mindanaoans, the NPA leftist conflict has taken a life of its own that people don't understand. Those are the NPAs, and the ideology, the targets are not clear. What they're fighting for is not clear. so often it looks like they've become a set of bandits and are simply there for themselves. Now, in a dialogue like this, it's good that something like that would be clarified. Mm-hmm. What are they fighting for at this time? We know what the Bangsamoro are fighting for, mm-hmm. you know. But in the case of the CPP-NPA, you know, toppling the regime is so far away that it simply becomes fighting the local military. Mm-hmm. or fighting the local businesses, which people don't understand. Mm-hmm. All right. So we have an opportunity at dialogue, trying to understand one another, and I think representatives of a social justice constitution should be able to talk to representatives of a social justice revolution. You know?
Okay, that sounds like a very good slogan we can use. If you don't mind, two more questions about seeming contradictions before I turn over the mic to Christine. There are a lot of pro-women initiatives in the Duterte administration here in Davao City. And Duterte has a lot of female support. And yet, especially in the last few weeks, we've been witness to rather demeaning language or conduct regarding women. How do we start to make sense of this, Father?
I don't want to speak for the women, and where offense has been taken, we will simply have to accept that offense has been taken. I would simply counsel, read Duterte in what he does, not what he says or how he whistles. You know, it's I don't mean to say what he's, you know, his style is the best presidential style, you know, but that's his way of doing things. I know that in Davao, the legislation that is pro-women is the best in the country, you know, and has been leading legislation in the country. So there, I'd have to say, maybe wait to see what he does, rather than just take offense at what he, you know, how he behaves. I don't want to excuse it, but I would be more comfortable if he stops the whistling and tempers his language. But that's not the substance of Duterte. Yeah.
And then one last question about the seeming contradiction. Your fellow Jesuit, Archbishop Antonio Ledesma, issued a pastoral letter just before the elections, where, among other things, he referred to the killings in Davao, supposedly by the Davao Death Squad. The contradiction I'm looking at is, I don't think there is evidence to prove that these 1,200 or so killings did not happen. So, do we give credit to Duterte for this this kind of what, I'm not sure if the word is achievement, or as Archbishop Ledesma said, do we take him to task for failing to stop these 1,200 killings since 1998, I think. So I guess the seeming contradiction has to do with the price that Davao City pays for the peace that it enjoys. How do we approach this question of the Davao Death Squad?
That's a difficult question, and I don't mean to diminish its import. What Archbishop Ledesma said is true. There is a problem of the Davao death squads here. And there has been no proof that it's linked to Duterte, but it's also true that there has been no action against them. The Ateneo de Davao took a survey. We do citywide social surveys based on the methodology of the social weather stations. Mm-hmm. So we do this regularly. And one of the questions we asked of the Davaoeños was, do they accept the Davao death squads and what is said to have been done by them? And it is a matter of concern for us that the large majority said yes. Another question that we asked was, what is your perception of the legal system? Does it deliver justice? Mm-hmm. You know? And the large majority said no. And they've been able to correlate the fact that there's been a failure in the justice system with their approval of what seems to be a system that is delivering justice. Is it the best way that things should be? Certainly not, no. But that's the empirical reality here, that people are supportive of what seems to be delivering justice or delivering peace and order, you know. Now I know that it's very dangerous and it's subject to human rights abuse and subject to error, and people have no ability to defend themselves. But it seems that the people who are looking at this understand that, all right? So it is a big price that you say that has been paid. At the same time, you know, the justice system that's supposed to prevent this sort of thing seems not to be functioning. Mm-hmm. And people understand it not to be functioning. You know?
Father, you're confident with Duterte, but do you trust the people surrounding him, especially the ones he appointed to government positions? Because some of them are controversial as well, or they have other people have raised concerns about their integrity or their links to cases of corruption. So what can you say about that?
As of now, I'm not making judgments on his appointees. I feel, with many of my people here, let's give him a chance. No, I felt that somebody else might have been a better Department of Education secretary, but he has made his choice. I respect it. I'll work with that person. No, so let's see what comes of this.
You said that the peace process might take a different shape. So you have the framework agreement on the Bangsamoro and the comprehensive agreement on the Bangsamoro. They stay. Are you saying that perhaps it might not be the current shape of the Bangsamoro Basic Law that will be laid before Congress?
Well, I hope that there will be success, there will be respect for the comprehensive agreement, Bangsamoro. That's a national commitment, you know, and I really hope that it will be respected. For that to be respected, I think, I hope that the Muslim community can get together and understand itself to be represented by the MILF. Mm-hmm. But we know that that's challenging, all right? Because not all feel that they're represented by the MILF, all right? So I hope that we can work things out as is prescribed by the Comprehensive Agreement Bangsamoro. And I hope that this happens before a federal system of government can be legislated by a constitutional change. All right. As I said, the Bangsamoro Basic Law therefore may take a different shape. All right. Because Mr. Duterte may have access to more Muslim groups whom he may lead to a new agreement, among themselves for the sake of a Bangsamoro. But I am hoping that it will still be within the framework of the Comprehensive Agreement Bangsamoro.
Talking about greater participation by Mindanao in the national government, do you see, or are you encouraging perhaps your professors or some of your alumni to join the Duterte administration? Can we look forward to more Ateneo de Davao?
I think he's taking a number of our alumni. But I'm very jealous of my people. I hope he doesn't take my people. But we will help as much as we can. We think that we can help by convening people. We've done that in the past, and we will continue to do it. Like with the National Democratic Front, the CPP-NPA, that's coming up June 8th, and June 11th and 12th. We'll be convening a large number of indigenous peoples groups here, in the hope, once again, to be able to contribute to the discussion. In these discussions, people can say what they want to say. It's documented. It goes out on social media. Some of it becomes viral, but that's a contribution, I think, that we can make to this process. There.
Yeah, and maybe you can explain it to your 86,000 followers on Twitter. I wonder,
not as many as yours.
No. We have a lot on INQUIRER.net, but individually it doesn't compare to yours. But Father, maybe just one last question. I know that President-elect Duterte is interested in constitutional change. Would Ateneo de Davao, your law school, take the lead in maybe starting the discussion on how this change will take place? Will it be through a constitutional convention? What kind of amendments would be in play, and so on?
We will certainly be very active. We've talked about this already. We will certainly be very active. Whether we'll be leading, I don't think we feel that we need to be leading it. There are law schools in Ateneo de Zamboanga and Ateneo in Xavier University, Ateneo de Manila, and Ateneo and Naga is opening a law school as well. And we are organized for advocacy among the different Ateneos now, so that we can bring a collective Ateneo, the collective Ateneo name, to suggestions for constitutional change. So I think we would be very interested, first, in whether we should have constitutional change at all. All right? That's an issue. I know Mr. Duterte is very much for it and for federalism. But I'm also instructed by a person like Christian Monsod, who was a framer of the Constitution, who really believes that many of the intentions of President-elect Duterte can be achieved simply by amending the local government code. you can bring about constellations of provinces and get them working together, and de-imperializing Manila, simply by working with the constitutional, with the local government code. And it would therefore free us from the danger of the social justice provisions of the Constitution being tampered with. That's something that President Duterte may have to consider, because he's a social justice man, all right? And the biggest friend of social justice is Article 13 of the Constitution, It sort of spells out where we want to go. And the last thing I want is for constitutional change simply to be done with respect to the international desires of our multinational companies, who wish to foist their agenda on us, and who therefore may make the social justice failures all the worse here. So we will be interested in this, and we will participate. If there are changes in the Constitution that need to be made, we'd like to be able to participate, also to protect the social justice values there in the Constitution.
Maybe we can end on this note, Father Tabora. 2 or 3 weeks ago, you gave him advice. It was a very nuanced statement, but people remember, don't turn into a monster. Maybe we can end with advice from you. I mean, if you were in a position to sit down with President Duterte, maybe, I don't know, you're down with food poisoning again, he's sitting beside your hospital bed, and then you have a chance to tell him, it's less than 3 weeks to your inauguration. What should he be doing?
Well, I put this in one of my tweets, I remember how when Cory Aquino became president, she came from the masses, as it were. She came from the people. She was the epitome of a simple person who represented people power in the country, a very powerful concept at that time. When she got into Malacanang, every Tom, Dick, and Harry started telling her how to be presidential, And so Cory Aquino became presidential. And I think she was taken away from the masses, She became presidential. I mean, people began to understand. They say, well, she's really, fitting into Malacanang, But I think it hurt her, So I think everybody's going to try to tell Mr. Duterte how to be presidential. And my advice to him would be, just follow your heart and follow your people and remember your mother. That's all.
I think very few people know that his mother was a leader of the anti-Marcos struggle in Davao City, which was the reason why he was appointed vice mayor when the OICs took over. Father Tabor, thank you very much.
No, you remember that very moving scene where after he was elected, he cried on the grave of his mother, because his mother does play a big part in his life, and his highest ideals, I think, come to him from his mother.
Yeah, maybe this is fodder for another interview, but precisely because of the connection, there are many questions about his willingness to bury Marcos in the libingan ng mga bayani, his closeness to Bongbong Marcos and all that. But maybe another time. Maybe we need to do more research on into Soledad Roa Duterte. Father Tabora, thank you very much for giving us your time this Sunday afternoon. Thank you.
You're welcome, John.